Hi everyone. In this lecture, I want to go through the terminology that I'll be using in this course. The reason I actually want to do this is because I want to make sure everyone's at the same playing field. I'll be using a lot of terms in this course that people might not understand because perhaps they're not at that skill level yet. So I want to make sure everyone's at the same skill level and everyone understands what I'm saying when I say things like fields, explores, looks, things like that, okay? The first distinction I want to make is between fields, dimensions, and measures. Now, what are fields? Well, if you think about any data, right? Data is usually stored in a row by column table, like the table that we have over here, okay? Fields are basically columns, okay? They're basically the column-wise thing that tell you something about the data. So for example, I know this field is office name, so I know every single row in here will be an office name. Okay? This field is sales, so each row will tell me something about the sales. All right? In the data that we were looking into, the element rental data, we can see over here transaction has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 fields. Okay? Office has 4 fields, product has 4 fields. So simply just columns. Now, dimensions and measures are subsets, okay? What is a dimension? A dimension is basically a field that contains qualitative values that are used to categorize, segment, or reveal the details in your data. Okay, now let's break that down. First of all, they're qualitative values. So they're things like strings, names, dates, geographical data. You can even have, quantitative values that are discrete, like for example, ID, right? For example, over here, this is technically not it is actually, I guess you could argue either or. This is technically numbers, but these are still dimensions because they are discrete, right? You know, there's product ID 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth. Okay, they're actually, these could be substituted for letters and the interpretation would still be the same. This could be substituted for A, B, C, D, and so on and so forth. Okay? You can't do that with measures. Okay? That's why it's a bit confusing when I say sometimes that numbers can be dimensions, but they can if they're discrete. And the reason how I can see if they're discrete or not is if they can be substituted with names or strings instead. Okay, so that's the first thing, qualitative values. The second thing is that it's used to categorize, segment, and reveal the details about your data. For example, over here, we use office name and customer company name to categorize this table. So each row here is a unique combination of office name and customer company name. So this is Detroit Sandhall, and we get all the information about Detroit Sandhall. Okay? Dimensions in this example are the blue ones over here, and in Looker, they're also blue. So whenever you see a blue highlighted item, it's a dimension. Measures, on the other hand, are basically numeric quantitative values that you can use to measure. Okay? And the key thing here is they can be aggregated. You can basically combine 5 values of measures into one. That's the big difference. Okay? So, first of all, quantitative. They have to be quantitative, okay? You can't combine 5 strings. How can you combine apple, banana, pear, and so on and so forth? You can't do that. But what you can do is combine the weights of those things. You can combine 1.5 pounds plus 3.5 pounds plus 4.5 pounds together, right? To basically sum that up if you want. Okay? So in our element rental example, for example, in transaction, hours would be a measure because this is something that's quantitative that can be aggregated, right? We can't substitute these for numbers because there's a billion different values that could go in here, right? It's not finite, it's not discrete, it's continuous. And you would do things like summing the hours, you would average the hours, take the min of the hours, max of the hours, so on and so forth. So you can take these 6 hours and do something to it to condense it down to 1 hour. Okay? Sales over here is also a measure. Okay? And there we go. That's it. So again, fields are every single column. Dimensions are the columns that are used to categorize and segment the data that are in blue. And measures are basically the columns that are used that contain quantitative values that can be aggregated. Okay? Now, the good thing is that we actually won't be creating any dimensions and measures ourselves, because that's something that the LookML does in the background. So that's something we do go through in the developer and the administrator section, or the developer and administrator course. But for this one, all we're doing is we're using the dimensions and measures that have already been created. We're also going to make our own as well, but not using code. We're going to do it using things called table calculations and custom fields. Awesome.